My name is Aaron Ladd, host of the Chief Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My co-host Darren Smith got exactly what he wanted for Christmas this year in the form of a key flag on Chris Jones. We break down what went right and what went wrong in this Christmas Day matchup against the Broncos in this episode.
And I'm Darren Smith, live in the Arrowhead Tunnel, and I can tell you for a fact, Chris Oladukin is not the answer for Kansas City Chiefs. They will need to get a quarterback in the offseason.
And I'm JC Pearson. I'm going to give a shout out to the effort that this team gave today. Nobody gave them a chance. They were 13-point underdogs, and they battled till the end, and we'll talk all about it.
Chiefs Kingdom, stand up. It's the Chiefs Squad. Everything Kansas City Chiefs every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from Arrowhead Stadium, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Chiefs Squad Show starts now.
All right, the Chiefs Squad Show is live in the post game. Another Kansas City Chiefs loss. They fall to 6-10 on the year, 2013, the final against the Denver Broncos. I encourage everyone, if you are watching, to tune in on YouTube. Our guy Darren Smith is in the bowels of Arrowhead Stadium, providing you a look only the Chiefs Squad Show can offer you. And remember, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. The Chiefs played with some pride today. I'll give them that as well, JC Pearson. We'll touch on that in our first segment before Darren Smith goes into the locker room. What went wrong for Kansas City on both sides of the ball, what went right for Kansas City on both sides of the ball in this Week 17 contest. Was it the final for star tight end Travis Kelce at Arrowhead Stadium? We've touched on that a couple episodes. We'll continue to touch on that in this post game. We cannot have a show without you all, the audience, the listeners, the everydayers who make the Locked On Podcast their first listen, whatever the show is. We appreciate you all. Like, comment, subscribe, and do all those things to give the platform a boost this holiday season. JC, you sent it in the chat. We got some effort. A team that didn't have anything, quote unquote, to play for seemed like they showed up and really wanted to play spoiler against Denver in this one.
Yeah, they did. The effort was there. You know, I thought the intensity was there. Some backups got an opportunity to play, and I thought the effort was there. And it's not like Denver was taking it easy. They had a lot to play for, and they were giving it their all. And they had to make some adjustments. Denver did at halftime in order to get this win. But yeah, the effort was there. Want to shout out the crowd too, because I really wasn't sure what the crowd was going to look like after the stadium announcement. It's Christmas night. We're out of the playoffs. There's no Patrick Mahomes. And, I wasn't sure what the crowd was going to look like, but they showed up in full force and packed Arrowhead once again.
We're talking about effort. I think one of the things that showed up to me was the defensive effort. There was a lot of jokes last week. I'll raise my hand and say I was a factor in that.
Deservedly so.
There was a lot of weeks, a lot of jokes last week after
was chiming in.
One of the worst teams in the NFL kind of had their way on the ground against KC's defense, this vaunted defense led by Steve Spagnuolo. There were some long drives for Denver in this one. Let me pull up the drive chart here. But the opening drive for Denver was a long one. They had it for 14 plays, 56 yards. KC bends but doesn't break, only gives up 3. And that was a trend in this one. Denver had a 16-play drive that ended in 3 as well. That was in the second quarter. They had a 14-play drive that ended up with a touchdown. But there were points in times where KC, a team that really isn't contending for a championship for the first time in a very long time, could have laid over, could have played possum, could have not given it their all. But I thought the young guys showed a little something. We saw Jalen Royal start the game. We saw Noah Williams get some clock as well. Finally the coaching staff is maybe saying some things. You see Christian Fulton as well. There were some young guys that made an impact. Darren, what do you make of what we're talking about as far as effort in this first season?
Well, one of the good things that the players are still coming in is the fact, as you mentioned, they got a chance. You got a chance to see some of the younger players, perform as well as contribute. Obviously, you look at the 11-yard touchdown catch that Darren Smith caught to put the Chiefs on the board, give them 7 points early. I mean, that was a big deal, and when you talk about the effort, I thought there was a better coaching performance as well. I do want to give credit where credit's due because we didn't feel like we felt that last week or saw that last week against the Titans. So overall, like you all said, offense, defense, good effort, but I also want to make sure we give credit to the coaching staff because they stepped up this week too.
And a big special teams return, right?
And yes, special teams as well, and Harrison Bucker as well, but we'll get to that.
There you go.
Chris Clark joining us now. We're talking about a little effort here in this one. KC obviously didn't come up with the win, but it seemed like they could have rolled over, but they didn't for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that it was impressive that they were able to get done what they got done. The offensive line, I'm not going to say held the Broncos completely in check, but did very well for what they were facing and kept Oladokin pretty clean. I was impressed with that. And then the defense, getting a turnover was a huge deal, and special teams played a part as well. I heard that as I was coming on. So I completely agree with that sentiment.
I'll give special teams their credit. I was very critical on social media about the punt return team. Why wasn't Bashar Smith back there earlier? Why are we still the Nico Remigio train? I understand that he was, a fringe wide receiver, and maybe that's usually how they like to play the position in the past. But we said early Chiefs squad show midweek we wanted to see more of Bashar Smith with the ball in his hand in space. I don't know why it took till week 17 for us to figure out, hey, punt return is a way that he could help and be beneficial to this team. Who knows where some of those field position flips could have benefited you when you were playing games that actually mattered. I think that word to what Darren was saying about coaching adjustments, finally it seemed like, guys were bending on what they were so strongly held to earlier in the year and what sunk the ship at some points early in the year. Finally, we're seeing some experimentation and some different guys and names out there on the field.
Well, I think they did that out of necessity and, found out that, hey, some guys can actually perform and they don't have to just do the same things over and over. On defense, we played a lot more zone today. We did mix in some man. They didn't bring a whole lot of pressure, but those corners held up great. And did well against the run, well against the quick screens, and then did extremely well down the field for the most part. So, now you've got two corners that you can rely on and play if you need. And, Bashar Smith, you give him more opportunities like you've been saying. And, so a lot of positives out of this, but everybody gave effort. Kareem running hard in short yardage situations. I think Pacheco was running hard with the carries that he was given, but a lot of positives to take out from a game that no one gave them any chance to be competitive in.
Hey, don't say no one, JC.
I did, but you didn't.
Hey, I said 13 and a half. You don't remember that? That was just yesterday. I know you didn't have that good of a Christmas.
I got CTE, bro. I don't know.
That's his excuse, and he's sitting with it. Hey, look, I don't know how much time I have before I go into the locker room, but I do want to say, when you look at the stat sheet, it's interesting because they played hard, the effort was there. Somehow it really didn't translate over to the stats. I mean, they only rushed the ball 19 times for 82 yards, and you look at, as we talked about, Bashar Smith is getting the ball in pass plays, but they drafted him as a running back. So, there's still some questionable stuff in how to utilize their players or whatever. Looking at this, I do want to give a shout out to some of the defensive players, Drew Tranquil, Bolton, of course, Shamari Conner. All those players, those three players, of course, led the defense in tackles. Still, as it relates to penalties, the Chiefs, actually the entire game was penalty free until like the last 2 minutes of the ball game, or last 3-4 minutes of the ball game, where of course Chris Jones had a penalty, and I think they had a delay of game between Xavier Worth and somebody else not being able to line up properly or whatever. So when it was 3rd and 3, it ended up moving to 3rd and 8, and that made it more difficult for them to get the 4th down or to get the 1st down, a touchdown or whatever. So
did you say of course? Chris Jones jumped offside?
Well, if somebody's gonna jump outside, it's gonna be Chris Jones.
Oh man!
It's no sense because he's the only person that constantly lines up in the neutral zone. His helmet was touching the other players. Like, come on, man. Little things like that.
Oh.
Again, you're coaching or you're allowing it, but But I'm telling you, I think about it because I don't know why. Every time I think about that, I think about D4 line up all sides. Like, if only you just look at the ball. Like, all you have to do is look at the ball, see where the ball is. Come on. Anyway, let me just go on mute.
Merry Christmas, bro.
Yeah, that's the gift that keeps on giving this holiday season.
Oh,
I'm gonna be honest, I kind of trusted Chris at most points in time. I didn't think that he ever did anything to put the ball in harm's way. Even the one play where it was the RPO where he really should have handed the ball off and kept it and went into no man's land with it.
Yeah,
it still wasn't in danger of being a turnover-worthy play. It sunk that drive, granted that, and I'm sure
got him way behind the chains.
You get back in the film room and you say, hey, just hand the ball off. Give Kareem the opportunity to get 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But it didn't turn the ball over. It didn't. Darren opened by saying, there's no chance he has a starter. And I agree. He's not your starter. But could he be a serviceable backup that, keeps the game in script and on schedule for 1 or 2 games potentially? Maybe. What makes it interesting is obviously you have the offseason and there's better options out there and you can go shopping to your full extent. But I don't know. I would probably give Chris, ironically, on Christmas, I would give him a C for this performance, maybe like a C plus.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, JC.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I don't think he played bad. I think what you saw from him was about what you expected to see from him. Although I will say this as well. I expected he was going to be under more pressure. And the Chiefs offensive line, like I said earlier, kind of held up a lot better than I expected them to. The interior held up very well, which I did expect, but it was the tackles that really impressed me. And it wasn't that they, shut out the defensive ends. It was that they just kept them far back enough to where they couldn't get pressure and they at least let him get the ball off for the most part. Obviously, there was a couple of plays where it was bad, but going, your fourth string left tackle and your third string right tackle against the best defensive line in the NFL right now, I'll take that performance every day of the week. And to not turn the ball over in a game like this where you're playing at home and all of the emotion, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but all the emotion, because everybody keeps talking about, is this Kelce's last game? Like, that is playing into this game the entire time.
No, I don't think he heard any of that, because he wasn't looking for Kelce at all until the last drive. And I'm screaming, throw him the ball, man. I actually felt bad for the guy. They kept showing him on the bench, and he just looked like, like a sad, kid. Like, man, they won't even let me play with the toy or something. But but anyway, I think Chris, I think he can be serviceable. And be a backup guy that can come in. He showed some flashes. This was his first full game playing, and he showed some flashes and didn't turn the ball over, used his legs some. So I think he can be a serviceable guy, because you would think that it's only going to get better from here. We'll see next Sunday, of course, against the Raiders, but you would think that it's only going to get better.
We talk about playing with pride too. Nick Bolton is doing exactly that. And there's been times when this is not the only game where he's wounded, has to go to the sideline, put some dirt on it, and then get back out there. I know he's a very polarizing player. People didn't want to pay him. Some people did want to pay him. Obviously, he's got his limitations as far as pass coverage is concerned, but his numbers have justified him to be an alternate for the Pro Bowl, which he is this year. And I think, and they even mentioned this on the broadcast, just when you talk about the embodiment of being Spags on the field, Bolton has done a really good job of that, especially this year in a down year.
Well, he's what an inside linebacker is supposed to be, right? Tough, rugged, play hurt, play through injury. You get some bumps and bruises, and like you said, you go rub some dirt on it, you're right back in there and play sideline to sideline, and a good short tackler. But I think Nick Bolton is definitely an asset for that defense and somebody that they can depend on.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about playing with pride and you talk about all the different players that went on IR before this game. Chiefs made a slew of moves and bring up guys that haven't played at all. And then you go out there the first snap of the game and you got Jalen Royals starting. He was out there as a starter.
What was that?
In this game.
What was that?
He didn't get any targets this entire game. And he was out there in the fourth quarter too. So they were getting him snaps, didn't target him once.
That was weird. I don't know if that was just like our mind playing tricks on us, because I really thought we were actually about to get a Jalen Royals like legacy game from that point forward.
Hey, Chris wasn't holding the ball long enough to let those guys get open down. He wasn't even looking down the field. He wasn't even looking at Trav until the last series, but he was getting that ball out quick, man. And that shows some nerves, obviously. And then knowing that this Denver defense was going to be coming. So, hopefully it'll get better. And next week, hopefully we'll see the ball going downfield a little more.
Let's take our first break. When we come back, we'll talk about what went wrong for Kansas City in this one. Another loss, this time 2013 at the hands of the Denver Broncos. You're listening to the Chief Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there is no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot feature saves my lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Chief Squad Show in the postgame. Aaron Ladd, J.C. Pearson, and Chris Clark recapping this 20-13 loss for Kansas City. I believe it's their 7th loss in the last 8 games. Please double check me on that one. Not a year that anyone in Kansas City had planned. Let's continue to talk about some Debbie Downers this holiday. Merry Christmas to everybody who's listening, and if you're out there and celebrate. I thought third down is the big glaring one when you look at the stat sheet in this one. Denver converts 11 of 18 on third down. Meanwhile, Kansas City 4 of 11 on third down. Really, just Denver had the ball longer and ran more plays also. 71 plays to 42 for KC. We knew it was going to be a limited operation. We knew it was going to have to be rethought. I know that was another thing we talked about coming into this game is, hey, what do the Chiefs look like without Mahomes and all these key pieces? It was more of a death by 1,000 cuts offense that they tried to execute. And for Denver, their margin for error, it seemed like it was bigger and they could just win that way. Chris, you're muted.
When you go into the last drive of the game and you have a situation where the Chiefs need to go 65 yards and that's like 2/3 of their yardage on the entire night, that says plenty about where your offense was. They needed a short field. Special teams got them there once. Turnover got them there once. But this offense just wasn't good enough throughout the entire game. And when you cannot throw the ball very well downfield and you're not taking shots and you're not running the ball well, this is kind of what happens. And for who they were playing, I thought that they stayed in it a lot longer than I expected. But
yeah, I think, Darren, you have anything?
Nah, the players were players they dipped out. It's empty in there. So I told Steve I'm just gonna come back out and join y'all because nobody wants to talk. So
yeah, but to that topic that we were just talking about, it kind of reminded me of back in the day, the Marty Schottenheimer teams where we didn't have much offense. we relied on defense and special teams to take the ball away and maybe put the offense in a short field, which they did tonight. But then defensively, we weren't worried about the yards given up. We weren't worried about, third down, because we just were worried about keeping the score down, keeping them out of the end zone. And they did that for the most part, except there at the end. Those guys played hard. You want to try to come up with something to get off the field. They did that with the Fulton deflection and the interception, but and then we got the big return from Bashard. But offensively, we knew that there was going to be tough sledding, and the defense. I think everybody else played well. The effort was there, but you look at the stat sheet, like Darren, like you guys been saying, you wouldn't know by looking at the numbers, but the effort was there.
And I do want to quickly say that at the podium is going to be Andy, Chris Oladuke, and Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce. So that's one reason why Travis wasn't going to talk in the lockers, because he's talking at the podium. And before we even got into the locker room, Xavier Worthy and a few other players had already walked out in front of us. And of course, a lot of the players walked out, from the back of the dressing room. So make of that as you will.
Do we have anything else that went wrong for Kansas City in this one? We talked about third downs. We talked about some of the inexperience of the young guys. Bo Nix has been a quarterback who has gotten a lot of praise when things are going well. He has gotten some dirt thrown in his name when things haven't gone as well. I thought he looked poised. I thought he looked comfortable. Spags tried his best to keep him off script, and it seemed like he was moving around and still making plays.
Yeah, but they had to change up, kind of their philosophy on both sides of the ball. If you heard Sean Payton's interview at the start of the second half, he said that, obviously that, they were going to have to do some things a little differently, both rushing Oladokin and then also offensively, with the zones that the Chiefs were playing kind of threw them off a little bit. So they had to make some adjustments, and, they were able to do that and make some plays, which you expected them to do. But, I still think all in all, the Chiefs played well. And because to be honest with you, I didn't think that the game would be as close as it was, to be honest with you.
Hard to argue that point at all. You look at how this game was going into this game with all the players that the Chiefs were missing, and to have this a one-score game at the very end, very surprising. The defense obviously was really the storyline for most of the game, because they were able to keep the Broncos offense slowed down enough, and they got the one turnover that really helped the Chiefs offense get the points on the board. But it goes back to kind of the same thing in some regards with the way that this offense has played all year. I mean, you have a drive or two that looks okay, and then all of a sudden you can't do anything. It's just inconsistencies. And it wasn't – obviously, you have Oladokin having his first start, so that's going to play into it. But at the same time, it's more the same as what we've been dealing with all season.
Yeah, I watched this game and I still feel the same about the Chiefs. They need to rethink and rebuild a lot of pieces of who they are or how they do business, identity on both sides of the ball, in order to get back to a dynastic sort of situation. And Darren has talked a lot about the coaching staff and wanting an overhaul and wanting things done differently. It's going to take some fresh faces to kind of redo, because now we're really seeing what it looks like when we don't have superior talent, when it's not 15 to 87 in their primes, when you're piecing in. I understand they're fourth and fifth stringers in some cases, and I get that. You're going against a dominant defense, but the offense is just not doing enough. This is 13 points. Last week it was 10 or 12. It's just week after week. This is not getting it done in the National Football League.
And it's funny you said, because that's exactly where I was going to go, and that you could tell just by how things played out that someone last week is going to be next week in Las Vegas who didn't sign a contract extension, which is, of course, I'm talking about Matt Nagy. It's during the presser this week, Steve Spagnuolo made the point of talking about, for the first time they'll be able to actually, view some of the scout stuff as it relates to, because they'll be able to actually watch. Sorry, I was at the checker walking past. they'll actually be able to watch the college football playoffs and stuff this time around because, outside of next week, Vegas, they'll be able to sit back and watch, some of the college players play, and they can do their scouting. They haven't been able to do it because they've gone so far deep into the playoffs, and whether it's the end of January or mid-February, they haven't had to do that. So, but you look at somebody like Matt Nagy, because his name has been bandied around, I'm getting the feeling that this is kind of like 2017, saying Tennessee Titans in the playoffs all over again, where, he is mentally already gone. For me, in my opinion, he's mentally gone, and is just waiting on the season to end next week.
That's Matt Nagy talking about.
Yes, Matt Nagy. And if you look at it, the play calling kind of mirrors that.
I did think it was interesting. We got a shot at the end of the game where they're trying to get the drill in to score the 7 points. Oladokin. This was right when the delay of game happened. And you saw Andy and Matt Nagy's relationship there on the sideline. You could still see Andy Reid is still in the trenches trying to get these points at the end of a Week 17 game with the third-string quarterback in. We keep talking about the sexiness of this job and who offensive coordinator would want to step in. Andy is still in. The report that we got last week of he ain't retiring, that wasn't out of the blue. That wasn't out of that was meant for a reason. He's still bought in and has his fingerprints all over the offense. So who are you bringing in that is going to work hand in hand with a recovering Patrick Mahomes, an Andy Reid at the end of his career trying to get one more, a dynasty trying to get rebuilt? There's a lot of pieces to that pie. Chris, you go, because I can see you trying to rear to get in.
I look at this and it's going to be interesting how they're going to rebuild. I mean, if Nagy's gone, which is what everybody thinks is going to happen, do you start over on the offensive skill position coaches to an extent because you're already starting off over at offensive coordinator? There are a lot of different position coaches that I think need to be reevaluated, and we've kind of talked about that a couple times. And you talk about needing new faces and new different things. This is a scenario where you are not going to have games that you're going to be playing past this next week, and you have the ability to hire whoever you want to hire because you're going to be one of the first coaching staffs that's going to be available to go interview guys. That doesn't normally happen. Take advantage of it and go get some new faces and try to find somebody that you want in here. The other part, when you talk about the offensive coordinator, is there an offensive coordinator you're going to want that isn't going to want to change up the coaching staff to an extent? I can't imagine that you're going to have somebody that's going to want to come in and take this offensive coordinator role and not make some changes based on the way things have been going at the different positional groups for the Chiefs.
And Chris, and look, I know people think that we'd be bad about this, but to that point, and I only say it because of what we've seen over the last 6, 7, 8 years, is that at the end of the day, if Andy Reid is still going to be the one calling plays, it doesn't matter who you bring. If you bring Kafka back, he's the interim head coach in New York. If you were to bring him back as the OC, Andy's still going to be the final play caller. So it's like, so again, you can hire somebody, but if you're not going to let them install their offense, let them call the plays, let them run the show, then we're just running around, chasing our tails or whatever, thinking that something different is going to take place, and it's not.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think there'll be another OC. I don't think there's going to be a mass overhaul and a mass change just because of what's happened this year. Because if there is a new OC or some new coaches, there's going to be guys that are familiar with his system, that I think that have some history with him, and knows how he operates, knows that he's going to be involved in the play calling, the system install, all those things. But it's hard to say that, hey, we were just in the Super Bowl last year, we have a down year, and now nobody knows how to call plays. Now everything goes haywire. I think they're going to be thinking that, hey, if we get the right players in here, we can still run what we run. We just got to get some more talent in here because, it's worked before, whether it's just 15 and 87, you got to try to find another 87 or something. But, it's hard to say. And if I'm the coach and I'm saying, well, we've been to 5 of the last 6 or 7 Super Bowls, how are you going to tell me that my system doesn't work? it's going to be hard. It's hard to do that.
No, I agree with you.
I agree with you on that. The one point I would make is, while you have been to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls before this one coming up, Andy Reid didn't do anything to innovate this year. Like, that was the thing that really stuck out to me, is every single year it seems like he's been here, he's brought some new wrinkle into the system, and there was nothing this year. I don't remember seeing anything that I haven't seen Reid do in years past this season. So he wasn't being creative. He wasn't really getting into the nitty-gritty like he normally does. And I think that showed on the offensive game plan throughout the season.
They got complacent, I would argue. And now you have an opportunity to use this down year, or whatever you want to call it, as a chance to look in yourself in the mirror and say, are we making enough changes to stay ahead of the curve? Let's take a break here on the Chief Squad Show. When we come back, we'll recap this game. Darren, I got to hit commercial, but you'll be the first mic after the commercial. Appreciate you working hard for us. We're listening to Chief Squad Show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Broncos over Chiefs 20-13, the final week 17 from Arrowhead Stadium. Kansas City falls to 6-10. Travis Kelce, was it his last game at Arrowhead Stadium? We'll talk about that in our final segment. 6 targets, 5 catches, 36 yards. What went right for Kansas City in this one? Or we can continue our coaching conversation. Darren, you are the first mic back in.
Yeah, thank you. And if you hear something, it might be Travis over the speakers, because I think they're going to play him on out here. But to JC's point, when he talks about the talent, I'm starting to believe that, it's one thing about the coaching staff, but we really have to elevate our talent that we have, because, because to be quite honest, it's starting to look like some of these receivers, I think we're praising them a lot more, or we praise them a lot more than the talent that they've actually showed. And I think a lot of it, again, I think Patrick covers a lot of the warts, and I do believe that it's starting to show, in his absence, because a lot of people, and I'm just saying from what I saw on social media tonight, a lot of people were very upset with Xavier Worthy's route running, saying not being able to stay in bounds and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of, there's a lot of things that the Chiefs need to improve on, and the roster, where you really have to. Now, granted, they're not going to get rid of Worthy, they're not going to get rid of Rice because they're on rookie deals, but you need to bring some stuff. You need to bring some bona fide ballers in on this team, especially when it comes to the offense, to help Patrick. I wish they could have got DeAndre Hopkins when he was getting traded from Houston to Arizona. We could have got that D-Hop versus what we saw last year. But the team really has to upgrade at the wide receiver position. And I also say that because when when these players lose, they don't take accountability and stick around. And look, it's been a big thing about these players not talking to the media. This is what you get paid to do. And the thing is, if you can't handle simple questions from the media for people who come, because look, if you had a good game, you want us to come before you put a mic in your face so you can get out there, quote unquote, and it helps your brand. But when you don't play well or you lose, the first thing you do is hurry up and get dressed and get out of here before we get a chance to start in the locker room. And that's not. I'm not whining about it, but it's unfair to really the media as a general, but also to the fans, because people expect us to get content to provide to them. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but it is to JC's point about they need to improve the overall roster.
Anybody want to take that? Overall roster, coaching staff is something we've talked about a lot, but where do you think the roster is as far as the rest of the league?
The defensive line, it's very bad. Sorry. Go ahead, JC.
No, go, Chris. You're good. Go ahead.
Defensive line, they absolutely need to rehaul. I don't know where you really start, because there's questions. Chris Jones is going to make $35 million in 2026. Is it in Kansas City? Probably, but
should have traded him last year.
is there something they can do there? We'll see. They're going to have to eat a lot of money if they're going to try to trade him. I'm not saying that they're going to, but they got to do a rehaul of the defensive line, and they've needed that for at least 3 years, if not 4 years. They keep bringing back the same guys: Mike Dana, Derek Nottie. You keep bringing these teams guys back, and they're not getting it done. George
Fennell.
Karlaftis, George Karlaftis, I think would be okay. And I know people don't like what they're paying him, but they're paying him mid money for a defensive end, so I don't hate it.
He's not even give you, but because the only pushback on that is that he's not even giving you mid stats.
No,
that's the
problem.
Did he play today?
On that. I don't disagree.
Did
with
he
you
play
on
today? He was out today, wasn't
he? No, he was.
Oh,
yeah.
He was out.
He was there, but he was sick.
What?
I mean, they did say before the game he was sick. Not saying not saying that should matter, but yeah, he didn't do anything.
Had a stuffy nose. No, I'm not kidding. But George,
I mean, but hold on, but we talked about last week how he and Chris Jones combined for 3 tackles. This week they combined for 4.
Yeah. You got to upgrade the roster, no doubt about it. But you only have so much money. That's the puzzle that you have to try to figure out every year, and not just every year, but looking into the future. So, what they did was try to gamble while they had the core to get to as many Super Bowls as they could. And we all knew that this day was going to come where they were going to have to kind of tear it down and rebuild. And we're here. And I think, if you talk to the fans or you talk to people around town and say, hey, would you take 5 of the last 6 or 5 of the last 7 Super Bowls to be where we're at now? I think people would take that. And now the job is to, how do we get back to that point? But we knew that this was going to happen at some point in time.
This is the one question I'm going to ask because Aaron brought it up coming out to break, or somebody brought it up either before we went to break or coming out, where the coaching staff didn't forget how to coach all of a sudden after being at these Super Bowls, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So so the same can be said where somehow I'm giving them benefit of the doubt. These players didn't forget how to catch footballs, didn't forget how to kick the football, didn't forget how to tackle. Somehow, somewhat. I was going to say Merry Christmas. Somehow, some way. I'm sorry, that was James Winchester. Somehow, some way. You know what I'm saying? The lack of skill, talent, something happened.
They regressed at some key positions. The quarterback play was not as good as it was in previous years. That's before Mahomes got hurt. The running back room was not as good as it had been in previous years.
That's what I've been saying.
The wide receiver room was not as good as it had been in previous years. The defensive line room was not as good as it had been in previous years.
Guys.
You can go back and say if you want to retool and rebuild and all this stuff, but these guys got to get better. I understand that y'all went to Super Bowl after Super Bowl and that reassured that y'all were good. Absolutely.
At some point.
But there was a point in time where y'all got stagnant. Everybody. Everybody. Not just one person, not just one position group, multiple groups, multiple coaches.
So what did they do in the offseason then? I mean, because every offseason they always seem to be working out with Pat. I mean, is it just they work out those 2 weeks and then they just, what are they just chilling the rest of the summer or something, or what?
Yeah, well, first of all, guys, every year, that's why they grade these guys, and either you'll hear them talking about a player is still ascending or he's descending, right? So, when you're younger, you're supposed to be.
How many players on the
better.
Chiefs are still ascending, JC?
Right, exactly. No,
well, answer. How many people do you think are ascending still?
Well, I mean,
I'd say Trent,
some of the younger
I'd
guys,
say Leo.
The 2 young corners. I think Nick is still, but yeah, they've got a lot of older guys that have peaked and probably and are starting to descend. But those were the guys that you gave the money to, that you've been riding with, and it's going to happen because in this league, every year. And when you start getting older, it seems like all of a sudden you hit a wall and now you're not. Damn, what happened to him? Well, Father Time is undefeated, and when you have too many of those guys, then it's glaring. And kind of right now, that's where this team is. But they wanted to ride with those guys because they had been so successful. And but it happens to everybody. Father Time is undefeated in this league, and it can happen gradually or it can happen all of a sudden. But when you have a lot of guys, it starts to be glaring. So to answer your question, Aaron, they have a lot of guys that are descending now, But a lot of those guys are making a lot of the money too. So that's where they have to change.
Darren, you're muted.
I'm sorry. You have to weigh the talent versus what they're getting paid. Because again, I mean, if we can't judge someone who's a 4th or 5th round draft pick that's getting paid 4th or 5th round money versus somebody who's on max contracts like Chris Jones and call out to some of these other players. It's not fair to them, and I mean, it's not a fair evaluation. And so, and I will say shout out to George Clark because I'm sitting. He knows I've said things about him, and he still walks by and makes sure he wishes me a Merry Christmas. That's professionalism. I just want y'all to know that.
I'm holding everybody to the same standard. I don't really care how much money you make. The standard is championships in Kansas City, and that's partially because of the work that y'all put in. Y'all continue to tell us that, the effort and everything, the leadership, the core, and all those things were about building towards getting to playing football in January and February. The goal was not met this year. So I'm holding everybody accountable across the board. It doesn't matter where I understand that some people were paid more and whatever, and y'all wanted to pay the core. That's cool. I think we just need to guard against that dangerous mentality of, we're just a couple moves away or a couple steps away. You need to see this as we rebuild from the ground back up.
You think we should blow up the whole team?
I didn't say blow it up, but I think the mindset that, we were close before, we've done it before, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. Right. You got swept by the Broncos. You got swept by the Broncos this year.
You got swept by the Chargers too. I mean, you make it sound like the Broncos or the Cleveland Browns, bro. The Broncos ain't,
I ain't gonna lie. The Cleveland Browns probably could have beat them.
Yeah.
But were they really that close? No. And I say that look at last year. You win 17 games, 17 one-score games. You had the ball bounce your way that I think covered up a lot of things that they had going wrong last year before they even got to the playoffs. And then they get to the playoffs and they can't do anything against the Eagles.
Damn, Chris, that's exactly where I was going with. And you took the words out of my mouth. Go, keep preaching, because that's exactly what I was about to say. Go for it, but
all I'm saying is I think that yes, they got to 5 of 6 Super Bowls, and that's fantastic. I think that's great. But you saw holes in the offense, or you saw holes on the entire roster last year that just because they got some balls bouncing the football bouncing their way at times, and players making plays and Mahomes doing Mahomes things, it covered some of it up. But the Eagles in the Super Bowl showed you this team wasn't really that close. And then you get into this season and everything goes the other direction for them, and you have this kind of reality. I'm not saying you got to blow it up, but you're going to have to make some big moves, and it's not going to be just a offensive coordinator and add a couple of players.
You do got to get down to the studs, down to the root of it. But again, I agree with everything that Chris says. The only thing I'm gonna push back on, if any, is that because of those one-score games, shows the difference between winning and losing. Because the Chiefs, those games that they won last year, they've lost them this year. But the reason why they lost them this year was more on the Chiefs doing, again, just execution. Harrison Butker missing a kick in Brazil, forcing the Chiefs when they score again to go for 2. They missed that. Now, now you got it. Now the defense has more pressure. Pat has more pressure, to where you're trying to make plays to get the ball back. Hopefully try to go down and score and win the game. Then, of course, the Eagles game is what it is. But, but then you look at, all off season. I've said it before, all off season. All they talked about was explosive plays, scoring all these points. They did it against the Raiders and the Washington Commanders. Somehow, some way, they left that scoring superpower in the locker room in Buffalo, and the team had never been the same since. Ever since that Buffalo loss, they've never been the same. I mean, because the next game they ended up playing against was the Denver Broncos, where they should have won that game, but missed kicks, penalties, a lot of stuff took place. And of course, they never should have lost the game against Jacksonville. That was what the owner doing with special teams and penalties and just a lot of craziness. So those one-score games that they won last year, they could have done this year, but the execution, the players dropping passes, missing kicks, penalties and stuff like that, they put themselves in the situation where they could easily be 13-3 tonight versus what they are right now, 6-10.
Yeah, and I think offensively, you mentioned it earlier. I think the biggest downfall was, overvaluing the production or the talent of the wide receiving core.
Yes.
And we bought into it too, because we thought, oh man, now Rashee Rice is back. Now we got Hollywood. Now we got Xavier. We finally got all three of them back. Man, this offense is gonna be all this and that. They're averaging 30 points a game, and we got really nothing out there.
And Aaron, I told you, if they couldn't score 30, I didn't think they could win. I mean, I'm talking about with everybody else. To me, that 30 was the key number. And when they were struggling in Buffalo to do that, it was like, to me, they needed to, because for me, in Brazil, the defense to me in Brazil was starting to look like 2018. I know it was the first game, but it was just showing shades of they were just going to get ran on, and they weren't going to be able to stop nobody from scoring. Especially if the offense can't get things together. So, to JC's point, man, these wide receivers, and everybody bought into it, myself included, Patrick, everybody was selling us a bill of goods, even though we be at practice every day. Yeah, they look good, but of course you're going against, your own teammates and stuff like that. So
with that though, and talking about tearing it down to the studs, Aaron, do you tear that receiving core down, seeing what they gave this team all year? Now, obviously, Rashee missed the first 6 games, but even though we came back, he had one, maybe 2 decent games. Never was that guy that we thought he was going to be. And Hollywood, no. Xavier, I don't know if he's been hurt a lot or what the case is with him, but we very rarely seen him use the type of speed on the field that we know that he has. So, what do you do with them?
Is it the one question I have for you, JC? Is it the players or is it the coaching when it comes to the wide receivers and the running backs? Because I question both of those coaches' ability, both of those positional coaches' abilities to get the best out of those rooms.
Well, as a skilled player, a receiver, your coach is gonna define or refine rather the fundamentals, but how to play receiver. These guys were high draft picks. Xavier was a 1, Rashee was a 2. They know how to play, but is the talent? It's one thing to line up in 7-on-7 and look great and all that, or be a practice all pro, but does it translate to the game? That's not a coach, that's the player. And the reason why I say that I think it's more on the player is because of how fast they run out of the locker room. If they're pouting and I'm leaving, or does it really hurt them, and they're upset that they're not playing well? And what are they doing week to week? Are they getting extra reps? Are they staying with the quarterbacks? Are they doing extra? You don't hear that. So, I got to say that it's really more the onus is on the player than the coaches.
And let me add this too. The other thing that I would add is that because they came in when they came in, they got a chance to just take advantage of the success. So so they didn't have to earn anything. I mean, they were coming in on the backs of current players. Yeah, it got spoiled right away. You know what I'm saying? Because they were already, when they were coming into a winning program, they were already winning, and all they did was just piggyback onto it. Again, as I talked about before, they didn't really go through any trials or whatever. Obviously, had the injury and the suspension stuff, but they still reaped the benefits of the success of the team.
So all they had to do was the basics, because Pat was going to make them better.
There it is.
So they didn't have to do the extra and work and those kind of things. So, Chris, I think it's more the onus, is more on them individually than it is the coach.
Let's take our last break here on the Chiefs Squad Show in the midweek. Denver beats Kansas City 2013, but it was the final game at Arrowhead Stadium for star tight end Travis Kelce. We discuss on the other side. Final segment for week 17, Denver over Kansas City 20-13. But was it the final game for Travis Kelce at Arrowhead Stadium? It seemed like the broadcast was very keyed in on this. They knew there were not that many talking points in this one outside of Denver needing the 1 seed and Kansas City finally having Travis Kelce's last game. They were locked in on him. Even the post-game show, I have it up here on my phone. there was more talk about Kelce and featuring him than there was anything talking about what Courtland Sutton had going on, or the final catch by R.J. Harvey in the end. I wonder if Denver was burned up about that. I think we've talked about this multiple times. I don't know if anybody's mind has changed on where Travis Kelce is going based on what we saw today. But to me, I thought maybe they would feature him a little bit more. He needed, I believe, 49 yards to reach 13,000. That could be something that we look at for next week. But this kind of felt like, in my opinion, his last game ago.
I'll go next, man. It's hard because, being here when they did the announcements, they did the offense, and of course, Travis was the last one, and you could hear the roar of the crowd, and it felt like they allowed that because they might know something that they're just not sharing with everyone. I don't know, man. I mean, he made it when he came up the tunnel. He made sure while we were on the air, he fist pound. He made sure he came over to give me a pound or whatever. I just feel like, man, especially the last 2 weeks. Why would you want to put yourself through this? Now, he probably knows Patrick's timetable. Patrick has talked to him. I talked to one of his family members this morning who called me for Christmas or whatever. And while they would want Patrick to take the year off, they fear that he is really going to try to come back the first week of the season. That's how motivated he is. And I saw Patrick, of course, when he came out the elevator, going into the locker room or whatever. I mean, that's just who he is, man. I mean, and I think if Kelce wants to try to run it one more time, of course they have to come to some sort of contract agreement in the offseason. And yeah, but I just don't know if he wants to go through that grind again, especially if Mahomes somehow is not able to come back, in time.
Well, it's the grind of. I mean, it's the grind of getting ready throughout the entire offseason. It's not just being ready to, show up and go to training camp. It's you got to be ready the entire offseason. You have to, and he's got a wedding this summer. I mean, all the stuff that he's going to have going on that is outside of the football world. And to be clear, I'm not saying the players shouldn't have that. By all means, go live your life, go do what you need to do. But he's going to have to make the decision. He has to make the decision by March. I mean, he wants to make the decision before free agency hits and before they start doing draft planning and all that. So, it's going to be one of those things. And you're right. They have to figure out a contract as well. Right now, I cannot see him coming back the way that it was talked about on the show or on the game today. And, Tony Gonzalez's interview with him before the game started. Like, I don't see him coming back based on what we've seen so far. I know that he probably doesn't want to go out the way he did, but he did say specifically, Mahomes has thrown him enough passes at this point. He knows what that's like. If it was his last pass or something, something to that effect, where if it's his last pass, it was his last pass. It stinks, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I think he's earned the right to do whatever he wants to do, take his time to do it. And if he wants to come back, I think he's earned that right. And it's given this organization, everything that he has. And the thing about this business, though, man, it's so cold-blooded, that, they don't often afford guys that, even though he's given everything to this city, this organization, on the field, off the field, everything. When it's your time, they're just going to usher you out. But, just based on the way I seen him sitting on the bench today, felt bad for him, because, I know one of the early on in the game, he got a catch early, and then he's wide open a couple times, and Chris doesn't even look at him. And, he came off the field like, man, what's going, like dumbfounded that,
And then he doesn't get any catches until the end of the game.
Right. I'm wide open. And he would just sit on the bench, and it wasn't that look of enthusiasm. It wasn't that look of intensity. It was just like, just like a sad kid, man. And he's a great guy too, man. And, he's a great guy off the field, obviously a great player, Hall of Famer. I don't think but again, nobody can tell you when you should leave, because once you leave, it's over. It's done, and so he should, hey, like a lot of players say, play till the wheels fall off. And I don't think the wheels are falling off yet. they're a little flat, but they ain't off.
And look, and I'll say this: the difference is because of who he's marrying. When he says he's done, he's done. I mean, I believe he's out of Kansas City. Period. I mean, when he leaves,
Why would they live here, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's got to. But outside of him making appearances for his foundation, Operation Breakthrough, I mean, Travis is gone. I mean, because the Hollywood, the TV, his podcast. And I don't even know where she lives. I don't know if she lives in New York. Well, she probably got a place in New York, LA, wherever. But I mean, I don't see a reason why he would even stay in Kansas City, with the exception of coming back for Patrick stuff or Hall of Fame or something like that, where he's being recognized. But I mean, if this is the end, it's a a sad way to go out.
But you know what? 99% of guys, it's a sad way to go out. Very few guys go out on their own terms at the top of their game, after a Super Bowl or whatever. But, he at least he can say, which is good and bad, that, he's a Pro Bowler in his last year. But that competitive mindset, too, is like, I'm still a Pro Bowler, so I'm still, playing well, and so I'm gonna take some time off and rest up and come back. So I can see both ways, but man, it's just going to be more of the same next year, like we're talking about now. Is this his last year? Is it and does he really deserve that? And does he want to put himself through that?
Does he want to put himself in a situation where he is not going to be a focal point in the offense? Because I think that's also part of the reality of him potentially coming back in 2026 is he going to be a focal point in this offense? Like, the offense has been built around Travis Kelce in that position for so long. They're going to have to make a shift. They've avoided getting somebody that can even get close to replacing him at that position. To their detriment at this point, and now they don't have anybody that can really step in and take the torch from him, so to speak. So I do think that it's a big question. Does he want to come back and be in a position where he's not going to be the number one option? He's probably not going to be in the number two, and really maybe he becomes the third or fourth option, but is that really what he wants as his last year? And to Aaron's point, we don't even have a clue as to when Mahomes is going to be able to be back, and that's a huge question.
I don't think Travis Kelce coming back is what's best for the organization to take the next step of their rebuild. I understand he's still got some tread on the tires, but ultimately, if they want to rebuild and rethink and retool and come up with this Dynasty 2.0, it has to look different. It has to feel different. There have to be different voices in the room. I'm not saying that Travis Kelce's voice isn't as meaningful as it once was, but there need to be new leaders and new voices and new opportunities to take Kansas City to a different place. In my opinion, we'll continue to talk about this in the coming days. We have our next episode in the midweek, next Wednesday, or this upcoming Wednesday. That is New Year's Eve. Any final thoughts, fellas, on this one before we get out of here?
Sad way to end the season, especially, I don't even know what the Chiefs' home record was, but it was not good. This is probably one of their worst in a long time. So.
Yep. Tough season all around. The fans stuck with them tonight as well. And, we got another week to go before we start officially talking about this rebuild and who's here and who's not. But
they try to find topics throughout the week.
We'll have plenty of topics, trust me. But yeah, at least the effort was still there tonight.
Chiefs are 5-3. 5-3.
Yeah, I was trying to look at that myself.
5-3 at home. They got 5 of their 6 wins at home. So
I ain't gonna lie, it didn't feel like it.
Good year at home.
It didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like it.
No, because they had that stretch where it was the Detroit Lions, the Baltimore Ravens,
Commanders, and the Raiders. Yeah.
That was why. I mean, it seems like it was forever ago, almost even last season. But yeah, I knew they had won, at least 4 games. But yeah, it was 5-3. That's better than I thought, for sure.
All right, fellas. Merry Christmas to y'all. Appreciate y'all hopping on.
Merry
Appreciate
Christmas,
everybody at home for joining us. We'll see y'all New Year's Eve.